Good afternoon, everybody. This is Jeff Brashears. It's Tuesday. It's 2 o'clock, so let's get going on this LCAP redesign input session. We're glad that you joined us this afternoon. So we're going to go just a little bit over. You can see the agenda. We'll go over a little bit about the redesign process that we're going through. Just to remind those who have not been to any of the World Cafe stakeholder input sessions, requirements of the redesign. And then kind of taking on, we'll build this out just a little bit, but looking at the plan summary prototype, and that's really kind of based on the feedback that we received. And then also talk about the idea of bridging in the annual update for next year, bridging the two templates. So we've had two stakeholder input sessions in a World Cafe type session, one on June 6th at Sacramento County Office of Education. They were so graciously to host us. And then on June 13th in Ventura, again, Ventura County Office of Education hosting us there. And from those, what we did, we started with is the first session, actually going back to April, we had a session that said, here's the requirements for the new template. What might that look like? And from that session in April, we took that feedback and kind of built some constructs of ideas for each of the sections required in statute for the LCAP, and presented that at the June 6th and 13th input session. From that, we got some feedback, and here you can see some of the themes is reduce the redundancy, especially within the plan summary, and then and as much as possible combine the goals, actions, and services with the annual update. And then statute calls for the use of expenditure tables, and the feedback was use those to the greatest extent possible. So besides the stakeholder feedback, we have an internal planning group, and that is comprised of staff from CDE, our office, and legal, and as well as staff from the State Board of Education. And so actually we're meeting tomorrow and kind of discussing and looking at and kind of building some prototypes again based on the feedback of June 6th and June 13th. Then we also have an advisory group that is made up of county offices of education, advocacy groups, CTA, school districts, charter schools, and county offices of education. Did I say that twice? I don't know if I did, but anyway. And so that group is coming together and hoping to have different perspectives at the table at the same time, and try to again guide the development of this LCAP to make it more meaningful than the current template, refine on and build off of what we've done over the years, over this last iteration. So the requirement is, it's just under Ed Code, says that we have to have an LCAP based on statute, saying that we're developing the LCAP to serve all students, and it's completed in conformance with the State Board of Education, the adopted template, which we have now, and then moving forward. And then 5.2 Education Code Section 52064 is what has required us to revise the template and adopt it prior to January 31st of 2020, which will be effective for the 2023 LCAP cycle. And you'll see later on in the timeline of looking at is that we hope to and intend to have this really adopted at the November State Board. We hope the State Board will adopt a new template in November, and just this year, giving us just that much more time to roll out the new template for all involved. So the intent for the changes is not to make it easier for LEAs to fill it out, though we hope some of that will be a benefit of it, but also to be more accessible to the stakeholders. Part of it is, and Josh is going to go over some of the topics and critical points of making the changes, but is to make it more accessible to the community, to parents and local stakeholders, and then present the information about actions that contribute to increasing and improving services in a manner that is just easier to comprehend and easier to digest. So more than likely, the infamous OR box will in fact go away as part of the redesign process. So with that, we'll pause for just a second. I don't see any questions popping up. There are the slides are available for download through the webinar and the application itself.
So in order to download the PowerPoint presentation, you go up to the top of the WebEx on the file menu. You should be able to select that, and then from there you'll see an option entitled Transfer, and from there you should be able to download the PowerPoint. So we're going to take the next few slides and look at some of the selected changes by issue. One of the major changes that's taking place in the template itself is in terms of the accessibility of language. The Ed Code now requires that to the greatest extent practicable, the language in the template itself be understandable and accessible to parents. It also clarifies that instructions may be more technical in nature in order to ensure that the template can be filled out properly. However, the outward-facing template document itself is much easier to read in terms of the amount of words that are on the page, and also in terms of the level of edu-speak that's involved in it. Another one of the issues is the prioritization of LCAP priorities and goals. In order to approach the planning process differently, the statute requires that the instructions for the LCAP encourage LEAs to prioritize state priorities within the planning process based on both data in the dashboard as well as with using local data in order to prioritize specific actions and expenditures. As part of this, the requirement to continue to track progress of the metrics on all LCFF state priorities has not gone away. That continues to be one of the requirements that's within the Ed Code. However, now it's specifically tied to the template itself. Another one of the major changes is in terms of the inclusion of expenditure summary tables. Statute requires that the LCAP template consolidate the expenditures for the budgeted expenditures for the actions and services in one or more summary tables. Those summary tables require that the funds for each action be broken out into one of four funding sources: LCFF funds, other state funds, local funds, and federal funds. There's also the requirement that there be a summary of the total amounts of each of those categories for all of the expenditures within the LCAP, as well as a total that's broken out by personnel versus non-personnel expenditures. One of the things that has gone away is the requirement within Ed Code to reference back to the SACS codes. So the SACS codes will not be used moving forward. Instead, the expenditure summary tables will be. And part of the hope here is that these expenditure tables will help to reduce the length of most of the LCAPs. And then lastly, in terms of the selected issues that we're looking at, the increased or improved services summary. Again, similar to the expenditure tables, this is a requirement for tables specifically for actions that contribute to increasing or improving services for unduplicated students, and clearly specifying within those tables which actions are being provided LEA-wide, which are targeted to specific unduplicated student groups, and which are provided school-wide at a school district. And overall, the idea here is to improve the clarity, the ability for stakeholders, for reviewers, for others to be able to look at a table that's summarizing all of the actions and services that are being provided in order to meet the requirements to increase or improve services for unduplicated pupils. So at this point, what we'll do is we'll pause briefly for some questions to see if there are any questions before we move ahead.
Okay, this is Jeff. We have a few questions, and we'll try to answer some of them as before we move forward. So there was a question about the metrics, and when Josh was talking about the prioritization of goals, the statute is very clear that the LEA must still continue to track progress on all the metrics within the LCFF priorities. So there will still be use of the dashboard, but it's still required to call out the metrics within the dashboard. And with that, all priorities will still be all 8 for school districts and charter schools, and 10 for county offices will still need to be monitored and addressed. There's a request for slides that are traveling. If you could send us an email, we'll be glad to send those to you. Also, there's a question about the term unduplicated students, and will we use that as kind of the outward facing? And frankly, we've received some pushback of using high-need students in the budget overview for parents, because that can also mean students with special needs. So we're looking at the term and how to best use unduplicated students and or high needs. So that's one of those work still in progress to figure out the best way to use the terminology. So there's some comments about the specificity of the requirements within the LCAP and moving forward, and that's more of an implementation questions that we will discuss as we roll this out. The purpose of today is not to get into the minutiae of the requirements of unduplicated or increased or improving services, but really we're going to show you a prototype here in a little bit of a plan summary, kind of reflective of the feedback that we received. And there's a question about SACs. That is correct. There is no longer the requirement to use SACs code within the budgeted expenditures, rather to be broken down, as Josh said, just into personnel and non-personnel costs. The summary, the expenditure table is different from the budget overview for parents because it'll be much more comprehensive of all the actions and the cost of those actions and the fund sources of those actions. Okay, again, I'm not going to get into the specific requirements like, budget overview for parents and all funds from Form 1, et cetera. That's not the intent of today's webinar. There's a question about will the state priorities be reworded? Not that I know of. Those are in statute, and I have not seen any statute changing the language of the LCFF. LCFF priorities. I'm looking at some more questions. There's a confusion of terms. I don't think that I actually understand that question. So, again, there's some questions about the technical aspects or unduplicated. Do those now include students with disabilities? They do not. Unduplicated students by statute for the LCFF statute are English learners, foster youth students, and students with a low socioeconomic status. And that's not going to change as well. Again, we understand that the term unduplicated students is not public or community friendly, and we're trying to find a best way to present that and convey that.
So at this point, we're going to move ahead and get into our discussion topics for the day. The two discussion topics are, first of all, a look at a potential prototype of the plan summary, and then looking at the annual update and potentially how the annual update could be might bridge from the 2017-18 to 2019-20 template that we're currently using to the 2020-21 to 2022-23 template that we will be using. During the next few slides, while we're looking at things, we're really interested in collecting feedback, and the way that we're going to do that within this forum is through the Q&A feature there. We'll be able to get a copy of all of the comments that are provided there, all of the thoughts that are given. However, because we're talking about the plan summary and different components of the plan summary, because we're talking about the annual update, what we'd like to ask is that for those specific comments that you preface the comment with the topic. So we've provided an example here. You see plan summary and then a dash or a colon, and then provide the comment so that we are able to tie the comment that's made to the specific topic or to the specific place within the template. So at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation over to the newest member of our office, Radine Girola, who's going to cover the plan summary prototype.
All right. Well, thank you very much. The next two slides, 13 and 14, are going to show you the big picture of one concept of how the plan summary may look. So what you're looking at right here on slide 13 for the plan summary is a shift from moving from a prompt-heavy LCAP template to more of a descriptor, again, for that outward-facing accessible language for parents. So you'll see there's 4 response boxes, and they're all descriptions. The prompts removed, but all of that information will be given to LEAs in the instruction form. So, big picture for the second part of the plan summary is comprehensive support and improvement. And again, it is more of a description, and the prompts are put into the instructions for the LEA. So moving forward, what we'd like to do is break up the plan summary and give you a look at a few of the description boxes, followed up with the instruction portion, and that is what we're looking for feedback. So if you want to take a look at the first two description boxes, the first one for general information, description of the LEA at schools and its students, and then the next is the box for reflections, successes, and the description is to provide a description of successes and or the progress based on review of dashboard and local data. So that's the concept. The next slide will show you the instructions. We'll give you a moment to read those. Take a look at them. So we want to remind you that this is a draft. It is a prototype, and we are seeking feedback on that. This is not what's going to be out there. The other thing that we wanted to point out is that the plan summary instructions, for example, the reflection successes, that's the previous prompt. So the directions are the same as the previous prompt. Again, the legislation is very clear that the language of the LCAP needs to be accessible, and so that is a concept that we're trying to show for the outward-facing to be accessible language, and then the instructions would be more detailed for the LEAs. Okay, look over this. Then you have two more of the description boxes, identified need and LCAP highlights. And then the next slide shows the LEA instructions. We wanted to point out here that for the reflections portion, the identified need, this is one of those areas in which streamlining occurred, and so it consolidates from the previous LCAP the greatest need and performance gaps prompt into the instructions for the LEA to respond to the description box for reflection. Then we have the comprehensive support improvement portion of the plan summary, and again, they're much more language friendly outwardly, but we wanted to show you that on the instructions are the prompts of the previous LCAP. So we also wanted to remind you again that we won't be responding to comments other than just if you need some clarifying questions. So for what we just showed you, for the prototype, if you have any questions you need us to clarify, we would love to hear from you.
So this is Jeff. We're looking at some of the comments and appreciate it, and we'll answer some of them. One was a request in moving forward to have an explicit list of the metrics, especially with the implementation of the dashboard. That's something to take in consideration as we write out the instructions and or, as the LCAP is developed. There's some question about our sound. I don't know. Some say that it's echoing. So we'll look at that. There's some questions about, what will be required as far as what's posted for the LCAP. It's way too soon to make any kind of guess of what that would look like. That's going to be based on what the state board approves and what that would look like. So there's some question about the plan summary differentiate between reflections and successes and highlights. Could they be the same? Again, this is just the concept of really trying to look at what we received in the feedback and kind of show you again, as Radine said, the outward facing instead of a prompt, but just what the reader would be reading. And then the instructions are going to delineate what's the expectation within the highlights. Just some, again, sample instructions are included in this. That is way too soon of what those will be, how they will or will not differ, because, again, the instructions are just draft and demonstrative of a concept and not to content at this point. And there's, if some of our language may not align, we understand that and appreciate any feedback that you see that we're not, we haven't done. And so, again, as Josh said, we'll capture these, Q&As and look at them and take your input and appreciate the time to provide the input. Some feedback sounded better. Appreciate that. There's a request to define overall performance, student groups. It's a dashboard and a implementation question that, for now, looking at that, is not something that we can address appropriately. So with that, we're going to move on to the next slide, I think. And so now this is a concept that we actually have not presented at either of the the World Cafe and stakeholder input sessions. So we'd like your thoughts and would appreciate it. So, we have our current LCAP template. We're going to call that the old because we're going to go to new, and we need to bridge from the old to the new. Statute requires an annual update every year to update, the progress of the goals, the implementation of the actions and services, the expectations, and the efficacy of those actions and services. Excuse me. What we don't want to do is we've heard loud and clear that the cutting and pasting verbatim is labor intensive and problematic. We understand that. But at the same time, and we also understand that what we would like to do is keep, allow for a fresh start or allow for a fresh write in the 2023 LCAP. And so we don't want to copy and paste goals from the current template into the new template. We want that a distinct break. So the question is, how do we bridge and how do we meet the requirements of the annual update that's required in statute and still allowed to do? It's kind of like a one-use annual update template, if you will, that allow you to move forward into the new 20 to 23 LCAP template. So one approach that we've talked about and listened to is just use the annual update portion of the current template, copy and paste, do it as you know to do it now. It would be a one-time use for the goals and kind of be a cover page on top of a cover page for the budget overview for parents, on top of any other cover pages that might be developed. But the annual update from the last LCAP or the current LCAP, and just fill that out and complete it, and then move on with the new template. That's one approach that has been bandied about. Another is you see here, kind of a hybrid with looking at and maybe modifying those 4 narrative responses that are currently required in the annual update section after each goal, with the goal implementation analysis. Statute says that we still need to look at the budgeted and estimated actual expenditures for each of these actions and services. Or question approach 3 question marks is, what else could we do? So we're getting a little bit, and truly I'm going to go on to silent air for just 30 seconds or so, give you time to say approach 1, approach 2, give us a third approach. What are we missing? But this is the idea that we want to capture, and if I don't make sense, ask me that too, and I'll try to clarify. So you'll hear a little bit of silence for a little bit. Thanks. Okay, this is Jeff again. So we're getting probably maybe a 6-4 split in favor of approach 1. Kind of an interesting question was, laying the foundation in the annual update to lay the foundation of moving forward into the new LCAP, which is, I appreciate that. So we'll look at that, and one of the comments that was made is, that supports the approach 1 was that you have enough to learn as it is to just finish out the old LCAP with the current annual update. It's familiar, close it out, if you will, and then move forward to the new template. Another idea would be to use the any expenditure tables and use them as a kind of a one-time. Again, this bridge, we hope to be a one-time use so you can start fresh, even if you're continuing some of the goals and actions and services, is to not mandate a carryover from the current template into the new template design. I'm going to go silent again and look at some of these comments again and be back in a minute. Thank you. I might add, as looking at these comments, and again, thank you for taking the time to provide this, is one of the concepts that was really strong in the feedback was to integrate the annual update into the template itself, into the goals, actions, and services for each goal within there instead of a separate annual update within the expenditure tables to have a place to show the update, and also in the outcomes sections to have the annual update. So really it's having the annual update split into 2 or 3 different places within the template. So it would be hard to show that from the old into the new in such a way. I have a vote for an approach 3. I won't read it, but I appreciate it. It's just kind of separating the whole concept between the two plans and the timing, and allow parents to digest it in such a way. So I appreciate that, and like I said, we get to capture that and bring that forward to our planning group and the advisory group. So thank you. I appreciate the input. Thank you very much. We're gonna. I'm just gonna go silent here for a couple more minutes and give any other thoughts. And as we do, and we'll move to the last screen, and y'all know our email address, lcff@cde.ca.gov, and we'll put that up here in a second. But just want to still give you the ability to read these approaches. And we have received emails after the fact, after both stakeholder sessions, saying, what about this? And just kind of had the chance to reflect further on what they did. So if you have ideas, we truly do welcome them. We will acknowledge that we received them. Don't know how much actual feedback we'll provide to your feedback, but we appreciate it, and they are taken into consideration, and they are shared with the internal planning group, and then as it meshes appropriately, it would also be shared with the advisory group. So once again, we will, as we take this feedback, and like I said, the planning group is meeting tomorrow. Our advisory group is meeting Friday. We have built or are building a couple prototypes, probably 2 or 3 options of each section, kind of where we are, and putting them in a prototype so they just seem to flow and can see how the flow is working. And after the advisory group on Friday, hopefully we'll have the direction to have 1, 2, or 3 prototypes to which to respond. And then we'll seek additional input. And we don't know, we're looking at having another stakeholder World Cafe session in late July or early August. I know the timing is hard for summer months somewhere in the Central Valley. But we're also looking at maybe we can do a survey, something similar to what we did with the statements of model practices when our office helped develop that. And again, the timeline is to bring a completed draft, post a completed draft, either in an information memorandum or actually bring it before the board at its September meeting, and then bring a final draft before the state board for adoption at the November 19th meeting. And as soon as the prototypes are built, we will unveil them. They have not yet been built. Like I said, we are meeting with our planning group tomorrow, the advisory group on Friday, and then as we have them, then we'll roll them out for input to those as well. There's a comment about, with the bridge and the annual update about having the ability to discontinue current goals and not have to follow them forward in the next LCAP template, and that's the whole idea of the bridge of the annual update is to allow the writing of new goals if an LEA wants to write a new goal. Or if they carry them forward, it's just not a carryover. It's a time to stop, to pause, and really the LCAP as a 3-year plan is to reassess where an LEA is and reassert and write 3-year plans. The prototypes, if we have a Central Valley stakeholder meeting, that would be the intent, was to have those prototypes there and get some reaction to, the next step. So the next step is building, again, based on the feedback that we have received at the June stakeholder meeting. A little plug for the e-template. If you're in the e-template system, as much of the data that is in there and is consistent with the new template and the new design, that data will be rolled forward. That is the intent. Couple invites from the Central Valley to host us. Thank you very much. We will reach out and explore that with you. Appreciate the willingness to host us. Appreciate it. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I think I'll just stay on and one more little blank of time to give any part of feedback, and then one more last time, and we'll sign off. Again, thank you for your time. Appreciate the feedback. I'll be right back. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for taking your time. I know it's summertime. I know there's a lot going on. There's little things like LCAPs that are due here pretty quick. So truly, kidding aside, I do appreciate the time that you've taken to spend with us and provide your feedback. Like I said, we have captured your, the Q&A, your ideas. Again, most appreciative. There's our email address and our phone. It would be much more expedient if you use the email, but you're happy to call us. We're happy to have you call us if you'd like. Again, thank you for your time, and we bid you a great afternoon. Bye.